Welcome to the Mystery Club, the place where we explore the most unsettling enigmas in the world. Tonight, we travel to the city of Liverpool, to a street that seems to hide an impossible secret, Bold Street. Some say this street is more than just a place people pass through. They claim it is a portal, a tear in time that, for unknown reasons, transports those who walk along it into past decades. But how could something like this happen? Are these merely illusions, or is there real evidence of temporal shifts? Over the years, disturbing stories have emerged. A man who sees the bookstore he is about to enter vanish, only to find in its place a shop that ceased to exist decades ago. A young woman who shops in an old-fashioned store, unaware that in the present day, that location is actually a bank. Even a thief who, while fleeing, finds himself trapped in a Liverpool from the 1960s. Are we facing an inexplicable phenomenon, or is there a scientific explanation we have yet to uncover? Is it possible that there are places where time folds in on itself? And the most unsettling question of all, if someone truly travels to the past, could they become trapped there? Prepare to dive into one of the most intriguing mysteries in the United Kingdom. Tonight, on the Mystery Club, we explore the strange events of Bold Street.
Welcome, brave listeners, to the Mystery Club, the place where enigmas and the most intriguing stories come to life. We will be your guides on this journey into the unknown. Every week, we dive into a universe of mystery and suspense, exploring everything from paranormal cases to historical enigmas and urban legends. Join us on this adventure filled with suspense, surprising revelations, and moments that will make you question reality itself. Are you ready to challenge your beliefs and step into the inexplicable?
Of course, Julio, and Des, and Edgar. I am Ann Maida, and as a member of this amazing team, I want to begin by sending a warm greeting to all our Mystery Club members, wherever you may be around the world. I also invite you to subscribe to our channel and give this episode a like. We are going to keep growing more and more. I have been conducting an in-depth investigation within the confidential archives of cyberspace about this intriguing subject, and what I discovered will leave you speechless. Today we travel to the city of Liverpool, to a strangely mysterious street that many believe could be a portal through time, Bold Street. For some people, time travel is nothing more than an urban legend, a fascinating idea that sounds like something taken from a science fiction novel. But when a series of strange events keeps happening in the same place, it becomes impossible not to wonder, could it be real? Is it possible that Bold Street is a doorway to the past? Bold Street, located in the heart of Liverpool, is known for its constant movement, full of life and activity. However, what makes this street special is not its shops or restaurants, but the unexplained experiences of those who claim to have slipped into the past while walking along it. Witnesses describe a disorienting sensation. They are on Bold Street, but suddenly something changes. The shops, the vehicles, and even the clothing of the people around them seem to belong to another era, usually the 1950s or 1960s. After a few moments, everything returns to normal, as if nothing had happened. One of the most famous stories took place in 1996. Frank and his wife Carol were shopping in Liverpool. Carol went into the Waterstones bookstore while Frank headed to a nearby workshop. When he finished and went to meet her, he found something puzzling. The Waterstones bookstore was gone. In its place stood a shop called Crips. Confused, Frank looked around and noticed something even stranger. The men were wearing hats, and the women had wide skirts, just like in the 1950s. Even an old van nearly ran him over as he crossed the street. He decided to enter Crips, which displayed umbrellas and vintage accessories. But the moment he stepped inside, everything changed. He was suddenly back inside Waterstones. Frank rushed outside, and the street had returned to normal. When he shared his experience, a retired police officer confirmed that crypts had indeed existed in that exact location decades earlier. Other details Frank mentioned also matched the period perfectly. Another peculiar case is that of a young woman named Imogen. She visited Bold Street to buy baby clothes for her sister. She found a shop that seemed perfect and was surprised by the incredibly low prices, but when she tried to pay with a credit card, they refused it, explaining that they only accepted cash. Imogen went home and told her mother, who shocked her by saying that the shop had closed years ago and that a bank now occupied that space. Skeptical, she returned the next day. And yes, the bank was there. But perhaps the most astonishing story is that of a thief who, in 2006, was running from a security guard through the streets of Liverpool. When he turned onto Bold Street, he noticed something strange. His pursuer had vanished. Looking around, he realized everything had changed. People's clothing, the old cars, and even a newspaper at a kiosk indicated that he was in the year 1967. Terrified, he ran into another street, and suddenly everything returned to normal. When he looked back toward Bold Street, he could still see the images of 1967 for a few seconds. Confused and frightened, the thief turned himself into the police. His testimony was supported by the security guard, who confirmed that the man had disappeared from his sight abruptly. The stories of Bold Street leave us with more questions than answers. Could there really be a time portal in the heart of Liverpool? Or are these events part of phenomena we still cannot understand? Whatever the truth may be, Bold Street continues to fascinate those who seek to uncover the mysteries of the unknown. Would you dare to walk down that street and discover whether you are chosen for a leap through time? Well, that concludes my investigation, and Edgar, and Julio. I hope you enjoyed it. What do you think? What would be each of your perspectives on this fascinating topic?
Well, a wonderful research that Andromeda is carrying out, and well, we are here witnessing one of the many cases of dimensional portals that have been reported throughout the planet. There is one that I have heard, for example, in France, of the story of some people who were going down a road and saw a house from another time. They entered, stayed in that hotel, and it turns out that the next day they left that hotel and realized that it no longer exists, and they stayed in a hotel in the past, approximately in 1800. Suddenly, in a later program, we are going to talk about that story, and there are an infinity of cases throughout history and geography where portal points are identified that are believed to communicate the present with the past. In some cases, for example, the phenomenon of the famous green fog has been presented, in which people cross and suddenly find themselves in a dimension, in a time, in a different era. And this is very famous, this case of Liverpool, since it is practically in the middle of a city, and it would be worth knowing more cases, but I am sure that this story will fascinate all our listeners.
Well, definitely this is a topic that I am passionate about, lately I have received a lot of information on the subject, topics that we are surely expanding as other chapters pass. But as Julio says, look, I think that this issue of portals and parallel realities manifests itself in many things. One of these is precisely this case of the store that you are going to visit and that you find in a bookstore. I sometimes think that we have an idea about linear time, and that is our perception. But what if we are really living several interdimensional realities at the same time? That what they do is, in those portals, you manage to jump to other moments in history that one would believe that as the feeling is linear, there should be a past, a present, and a future. But what if that past and that future we are living at this moment, there is simply a jump? I don't know what you think, but after so many things, I get that concern. I'm even going to give an example. The blackfish that they have found these days. Suddenly the fish, the monster,
the agonist, suddenly it is not the result of those jumps, of those parallel realities that are seen at certain times and return again to their realities, and suddenly it is a bit what would explain many things that we have lived in humanity.
Yes, and it is that this street earned precisely fame for these stories. And what Edgar mentions of the possible parallel universes, let's say that up to that point now, there are some trends or some current events that wonder if the future already exists. The common sense tells us that the future does not exist, it is yet to come. But nowadays, there is talk of the possibility that the future already exists, simply that it is happening in other worlds, in some parallel universes. Also, here I am going to allow boys to be a little bit the one who exposes both the arguments in favor of all these stories that are fascinating, that always help us to take into account and open our minds. I am also convinced of this, that it is necessary to have it. There is a lot that the human being does not know and will know. Just as in his time many scientists closed the possibilities, I am convinced that it is necessary to have that open mind, but also, why not here in our mystery club expose the voices, let's say, so they try a little bit to be skeptical, because it seems to me that it is a good balance along with this of thinking that they are time travel portals, that some people attributed a little to the desire that that street is a tourist street. It is a street with many restaurants, with many, they are analyzing it in what that street is. And of course, and that definitely, if there is an added value from a tourist point of view and from a visit to that street of these stories, I am not saying necessarily that it is invented, but it is also good to know that this street has that particularity. Some other people talk about the possibility of an effect that in psychology is called massive hallucination. Massive hallucination is a psychological phenomenon where many people see the same or believe to see the same, that has been presented in some other phenomena as well. Then, of course, without losing sight of the possibility that it is a phenomenon that has not yet been explained, it is also interesting to know what the skeptics of these events think.
I wanted to bring up a movie from about 5 years ago. I'm not sure if you've had the chance to watch it. It's called Yesterday, and it deals directly with this topic. The main character has an accident, and when he wakes up, he finds himself in another dimension. In that dimension, no one knows who the Beatles are. He was a musician who wasn't doing well in his previous life, and suddenly, he realizes he has a great opportunity. For some reason, people have no knowledge of the Beatles, so he begins to remember and record all the songs he still carries in his mind. Because of that, he becomes extremely famous around the world. The number of compositions created by the Beatles is something that, in my opinion, hasn't been matched today, both in quality and quantity. Now, I ask myself, and this is just my own speculation, why Liverpool appears in both the real story and the movie. It makes me wonder what would happen if, at some point, the Beatles themselves, or one of their members, walked down that street, traveled to another era, and found a kind of library of melodies, bringing them back to the present. Maybe that's why they were so incredibly prolific and produced music of such high quality. It would be a fascinating story if something like that existed today. But of course, these are only speculations one can imagine when connecting the dots. These kinds of temporal shift phenomena make it easy to lose the line between reality and fiction.
You know, I watched that movie as well, and you might remember something very interesting. Since he was the only one who still remembered the Beatles, aside from a few people, without giving spoilers, he ends up in an improvised songwriting competition against Ed Sheeran, the British singer, and he actually beats him because everyone is captivated by the Beatles' music. What you mentioned is a very intriguing theory. In fact, it's the first time I've heard anyone bring it up. As you know, there are also conspiracy theories surrounding the Beatles, like the idea that Paul McCartney isn't the real one and that he supposedly died years ago. For anyone who wants to explore that topic, there's plenty of material out there. What you're suggesting is quite fascinating, the possibility that those songs were discovered at another moment in some other way and that they're simply being used now. We're not trying to take any credit away from them, but it could be a possibility.
I believe this topic is still very relevant. It also makes me think about something we are experiencing right now, the case of Donald Trump and the book written by Mr. Ingerswood, I think that's his name, about Baron Trump, a young boy whose story even includes elements connected to Nikola Tesla. One could imagine that Donald Trump and Baron Trump themselves might be time travelers who return to solve some of the problems we are facing today, problems that almost seemed inevitable. It would be as if he were a time traveler coming back to act and correct certain aspects of history. If parallel realities exist, we might be living a past, a present, and a future all at once. And in order to fix certain things humanity needs, they would have had to travel through time, but not in a linear way. And that connects, interestingly, with the movie Back to the Future. It is almost an interdimensional journey rather than a trip along the timeline meant to correct certain events. In a somewhat exaggerated way, the movie shows something that might actually be happening and that we are beginning to consider as a possibility.
Adding to the story you mentioned about Baron Trump, we could actually dedicate an entire episode to it. In fact, it's referenced in one of the first episodes we recorded for the Mystery Club during the first season. It turns out that Donald Trump's uncle worked with Nikola Tesla, and one of the machines Tesla is believed to have designed, according to his notes and blueprints, was a device for time travel. When Nikola Tesla died in a hotel in New York, Donald Trump's uncle was one of the people who gained access to those files. So when you place all those elements on the table, a story begins to emerge that might connect with the one from the book. It will be very interesting to explore it in a future episode.
So if time travel is real, or if someone has the key to an interdimensional doorway, they would simply create quantum jumps. There are many concepts we'll probably explore in future episodes of the Mystery Club because there are truly fascinating topics, like the different versions of oneself mentioned in the movie The Matrix. But that's just adding a bit of flavor to the conversation because there are many intriguing subjects we can explore here in the Mystery Club. And it occurs to me that one of those topics could emerge directly from all of this.
The theory is truly fascinating. Some people suggest, and this connects with topics we'll explore in future episodes, that time is an illusion, that time doesn't really exist. What we perceive as time passing, from childhood to adulthood and eventually old age, may not be time itself, but simply events unfolding. In that sense, time could be a human invention. And as you mentioned earlier, it's possible that all moments already exist. Time travel might not be a journey through a man-made timeline, but rather a transition into other universes where events have already happened or are about to happen.
There is also a movie called Interstellar, which I've heard is being shown in theaters again, and it's based on string theory. According to string theory, you don't travel back in time within the same dimension or along the same string. Instead, you jump to another one. In that way, you might arrive in a different era, but without reconnecting to the timeline you originally came from. All these phenomena and ideas are just glimpses of a reality that humanity is only beginning to understand. As our knowledge evolves, we will learn how to handle these concepts, unless they are already being used secretly today. There are also many theories about secret organizations that supposedly engage in time travel.
It's time to bring this episode of the Mystery Club to a close. But before we say goodbye, we want to thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey filled with enigmas and emotion. Remember, mystery never rests. To keep exploring the unknown together, we invite you to stay connected through our social media channels. Follow us on YouTube as Mystery Club, on Spotify as Mystery Club, on Facebook as Mysterious Club, on Instagram as Misterio Club, and on X as Misterio Club. There you can stay up to date with our latest news, take part in polls and discussions, and share your own experiences and theories. Don't disconnect because mystery is always waiting for us around every corner. Until next time, and may the enigmas be with you.
Ven y cruza el umbral, aquí lo paranormal es real. El club del misterio te llama, donde el miedo en susurros proclama. Explora.